Going to therapy takes a different amount of time for everyone who pursues it. But the general consensus, I think, for most people is that we all wish it would go just a little bit faster. So, if I'm trying to answer the question, how long does therapy actually take normally, if there is a normal, what would that answer be? So there's a surprisingly small amount of research on how long the process of therapy actually takes, and that's because the experience of therapy is different for everyone. There's a lot of research on specific issues like depression, anxiety, PTSD, and how long those outcomes take. But in terms of the general process of therapy, it looks a little bit different for everyone. So the best research that I found that is very widely spread all across the web is a study that was done by the APA. And while it's very hard to find the exact study, the results of the study say that most people, approximately 50% of people who go to get therapy, see improvement to the point of feeling better about 15 to 20 sessions after they start therapy. In addition to those numbers, most people reported feeling significant change after only 3 months of therapy. That doesn't mean that everything had changed, but it does mean that they were feeling better than they did when they started, which is a good sign. It's a positive thing. While those are the general numbers, if you look at more specific things, there's such a wide range that it's very hard to give an exact number. For example, for someone who is working with multiple different issues, the results change from saying recovery takes about 6 months to saying recovery takes somewhere between 12 and 18 months, which increases the range by 2 or 3 times, which is kind of a lot. There's also factors like the level of comfort working within your own discomfort, or the competence of the therapist, or even the modality that they're using as they work with you. So while there isn't really a specific number we can give in terms of how long the process of therapy takes, as a therapist, I can give you a few different things that I've noticed working with people that make a big difference in the process. First off, one of the big ones, what other things are going on in your life? For some people, they come into therapy and they want to work through something specific like anxiety, depression, PTSD, and they're excited to work on it and they're motivated, and then in the midst of the process, something major happens in their life. Loss of job, loss of relationship, loss of really anything, or big change. And that impacts the process because usually things have to slow down and pause a little bit on what we were originally focusing on, and the focus will shift. And that's because I want to be present with them through what they're going through. And because usually working through those things actually does help with the whole process, but it does usually add a little bit of time overall. The second factor is that therapy is emotionally uncomfortable. And the more ready you are to experience and sit in that discomfort, the better. Because therapists in general, you can rely on them to pick up on the things that you are uncomfortable with emotionally and try and bring those into the room. Because it's through learning to sit with those things that we can really move forward and process. And when you're really resistant to those things coming in, it takes a little bit longer to get to the point where you can sit comfortably in those moments with those emotions and actually move forward through them. And finally, one of the biggest ones that I don't hear talked about very much is that prior to going to therapy, it's very normal for us not to question things in our life because we assume that they are normal. And that's because that is how we survive. We normalize our experience in order to make it so that we can process and understand what we're going through. And while there isn't really a normal label that actually works with us as humans, because everyone's experience is different, it is not unusual for us to experience and normalize very hard things, and as a result develop very dysfunctional ways of surviving and getting through them. And when we go to therapy, we usually end up trying to, or having to, question some of those things, which can turn our world upside down, and that is a very challenging, uncomfortable, and sometimes even frightening experience. And because of that, the process of actually going into questioning what is normal, what is not, what do I want in my life, what do I not, is something that shouldn't be rushed. Because when it's rushed, often it's too much and we decide to leave it. Maybe to come back later, but maybe not. When instead, we should take our time to get into those things, go kind of slowly, and find as much comfort in the discomfort as is possible. So while there's nothing that you can do to guarantee that your experience in therapy will necessarily go quickly, what can you do to ensure that the process goes as smoothly as possible? The first is to be patient with yourself and with your therapist. The process of therapy itself is overwhelming, and if you rush it, it becomes extremely so. And so allow it to take the time that it takes. Be patient. This flows into the second point to help the process. When you feel like you may be kind of stuck or really discouraged about how long it's taking, talk to your therapist about it. Ask them about the progress that they see. Ask them about the progress that they're still hoping to see and where you're trying to go with it. The conversations that come from those questions when my clients ask me tend to be both encouraging and also very reassuring that the process is working, even if it's taking time. Third, actively engage in the process. Chances are, if your therapist asks you to try some technique, to do something, to practice something, they have a reason. And so it's usually healthy if you actually try and do that thing. And if they tell you to do something and you're like, that doesn't make any sense to me, tell that to them. Have a conversation about it. Allow them to explain why they want you to practice that. And if they don't have a good explanation, then you have my permission not to do it. And number 4, practice stillness, practice mindfulness. Work on being present with yourself with no distractions and noticing what you feel physically, what you feel emotionally, what is distracting you. Because the more you're able to sit with yourself without distraction, the easier it will be to sit with the discomfort of your emotions and to sit with the things that you have to process through. It is hard, but it is totally worth it. So while there's no exact guaranteed number of weeks or days or sessions for how long the process of therapy takes, remember that it is a process, and if you're able and willing to be patient with that process and do the work, the results are incredibly worth it. If you have any thoughts or experiences about how long therapy has taken for you and you want to share those in the comments below, you are more than welcome to. I would love to hear them. But otherwise, thank you so much for spending the time to watch this. I hope that it was helpful, you enjoyed it. And if you are interested in it, I would love if you would give this video a little like. Maybe if you're also into it, give it a little subscribe. But otherwise, I will see you next time.